Okay, welcome back to Revelation. Glad that you're here. If you're watching on Facebook Live and see the video and you see some black smudge on my head, I was in a car accident, and just kidding. It's Ash Wednesday here at our church. Just finished the Ash Wednesday service. Let's get started. If you have your notes with you, let's turn to Revelation chapter 13. I want to go back real briefly and go back where we were last time, just to make sure we're as clear as mud as we can be. If you remember, in chapter 13, we're in this little third area, as Talbert breaks it down. If you'll look, if you have your Talbert book, if you go to page 56, you don't have to have it, but if you have it, turn to page 56. If you remember, in the ancient world, you had two kinds of temples to go to. Imagine for a second you had two different kinds of churches to go to. You had the temple of a god, Zeus, Asclepius, whomever, and you had a temple where you worshipped at the feet of a statue of the emperor. We call that imperial worship, imperium for the ruler. Two different kinds of temples you went to. Does that make sense? Two different kinds. One was to show honor. It's like paying your taxes. You paid your taxes, you went to the imperial temple. The other was religious in function. That's where you offered your sacrifice and so forth. And that's a long story there. But anyway, that's what you did. In the time period, certain religious leaders, say like me, if I'm a Roman in the ancient times, they could build statues and do all kinds of funny things with it. Make it sound like the statue's talking. If you look on page 56, they could do all kinds of stuff. And magicians, if you look in the middle, page 56, and what Revelation, John says that, just to make sure we're clear, on Revelation 13:11 and following, Revelation 13:11 and following. Remember last week we talked about that second beast comes out. He speaks like the dragon. He exercises authority over him. He makes the earth worship the first beast. And verse 13, it works great signs, even making fire come down from heaven to earth in the sight of men. And by the signs which it is allowed to work in the presence of the beast, it deceives those who dwell, bidding them make an image, blah, blah, blah. Verse 15, it was allowed to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast should even speak, and to cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain. He's referencing real stuff that happened in his time period. And so Talbert gives some examples in the middle of page 56 of what happened in the ancient world, how they acted like those idols could speak. Remember, of course, right in the middle of page 56, it says, contrived religious wonders are unusual in antiquity. One type had to do with fire. Hippolytus, that was an author, speaks about magicians' ability to produce a fiery bolt through the air. I don't know how they did it, but Plutarch's criticism of rulers who imitate God's thunder, lightning, and sunbeams indicates that some must surely have done precisely this. Ancient authors tell us about machines to simulate thunder. Well, who gives a rip about that? Well, because they think that's the gods talking. So if you get a big piece of metal and you shake the metal, whoa, 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 it kind of sounds like thunder, things like that. They also tell us about machines to simulate lightning. Dio Cassius, he's a Roman author, connects such machines with the Roman emperors. For example, Gaius, that's an emperor, quote, had a contrivance by which he gave answering peals when it thundered and sent return flashes when it lightened. Likewise, whenever a bolt fell, he would in turn hurl a javelin at a rock. It may very well be that in the emperor cult, such mechanisms were used to produce deceptive signs that would elicit people's devotion to Roman imperial power. And he goes on later on the bottom, next paragraph. Many assumed the statues could speak. Suetonius, he's a Roman author, tells without explanation about a statue of Jupiter, that's a Roman god, at Rome that laughed. The Christian apologist Athenagoras interprets the ability of statues of pagan heroes to give oracles and to heal the sick to demonic influence. And the next one, he gives a quote from Lucian, who was a pagan author. He was a Roman author. He says that they would take these fake images. It was no difficult matter for him to fasten cranes' windpipes together and pass them through the head. Then he answered the questions through someone else who spoke into the tube from the outside, so the voice issued from the canvas of Asclepius. So you had this big old statue of Asclepius, a male god, and in the background you would hollow out these holes. You just have all kinds of contraptions. And here comes Tom to say, Asclepius, what is my future? Or can you heal this organ? And I'm back there going, hey, Kean, say this. Yes, give me $30. And it goes to the tubes, and they go, he spoke. In other words, these were actual contraptions they would use in the Roman Empire. So that's exactly what John is referring to in Revelation 13. When that happens, the people say, look, the gods have spoken. They're alive and well, speaking through their idol. Well, of course, the Christians said, no, they're not. And what John says in particular is, in fact, who's speaking really is evil, it's Satan. Not literally Satan talking, but when his prophets, these false Roman religious leaders, if pretending I'm that guy, I'm speaking on behalf of Satan. And I'm deceiving the people. They leave that Ash Wednesday service going, man, that statue talked to me. Asclepius spoke to me. And John is saying when that happens in his lifetime, Satan has used these idols. The Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians says that very thing. We know those other gods aren't real, but those idols, in fact, are used by evil spirits or demons. So it's a real temptation to them. I don't have that struggle, right? I don't go to Dillon's or Walmart and find a local idol and go, oh, how about that? It spoke to me. That's not what's going on with me. But in their world, it's a real temptation because it's their normal routines of life. They grew up going and doing that. Their parents did it. Their grandparents did it. Everyone went to the temple. You went to the temple of the local god, Asclepius or Zeus, and you went to the temple of the imperial cult of the emperor. And so it's very tempting. It's the way of life. It's a way of life. It's like in the South, stop drinking tea or sweet tea. And so these people are real tempted for them. Does that make sense, what he's drawing out of? I'm trying to help there. Any questions or comments about that? I got to that part pretty quickly when we finished the study, but any questions or comments about that? Okay. Well, the end of chapter 13, it ends with these two major images of this imperial power. That's tempting, because if you don't bow down, they'll kill you. You need their image on you. You're a sign of the beast. And then there's this false lamb. It's a goat. It's a false one. It's not like the risen lamb, the one who's been slain, but a false one. So it's a counterfeit Jesus, you might say. And they're the religious leaders who lead the people astray. Okay. On to the next one. Okay. The last quick thing. I came back to that. I told you I'm going to do more. I didn't want to get bogged down, but I know people get so interested. If you go to the number, verse 18, 13, 18, when he says it calls for wisdom, and I said it's based on numbers and all that stuff. Remember the number system, and Tom and I talked for a while about that. So this is what it looks like in Hebrew. If you took his name Neron Caesar, or Neron Kaiser, you break up in Hebrew, if you transliterate it, transliterate is when you go letter to letter, letter to letter, letter to letter. That's transliterate. It's Kaiser, anyway, that says Nezer, it doesn't matter in Hebrew. These are the numbers that add up. When you add it all up, equals 666. Which is why, again, at minimum, his audience, verse 18, it calls for wisdom and understanding. If they know a little bit of Hebrew, they're going to get it. They're going to get that beast. The other alternative reading we talked about was in that manuscript. Remember this at all? The next one was a 616. And again, it's the same thing in Latin. You just take off the N. Take off the N of Neron, which is fine to do. Nero, Caesar, is 616. If you add those Latin, if you change these Hebrew to Latin letters. So the point is, at minimum, it represents this enemy like Nero. Enemy like Nero. That's it. And I believe, like many scholars do, that we're not supposed to be looking for it's a human person, but it's the ultimate evil. That it's not Nero himself, it's the ultimate. It's just shy of 7. By the way, if you add up the letters of Jesus, what number do you get? No, you would think that. Wouldn't that be so cool? But it's not. It's 888. 888. So you really have to know, think about this for a second. If you just saw 666 on a tree carved in, you go, man, how do I get that number? There's all kinds of ways to add up numbers to get to this number. You really got to know who you're talking about. It's a real secret. We do it because we work backwards and assume it's Nero, and it worked out perfectly. But we know this from inscriptions and pictures and drawings. It'll say, I heart, the person number is 243. There's all kinds of ways to get to 243. And Hebrew, Greek, Latin, whatever it is. And so it's a real secret. But here he's saying it calls for wisdom and understanding. Whether it's the Latin or from the Hebrew, it references this evil end-time figure like Nero. Okay. Any question about that? We'll move on, whether it's 666 or 616.
I have one.
Yes, sir. That's right. They put in the alphabet and they all have equal numbers, and that's what they get. Yeah, so it's both. This is before the Arabic numeral system of One, two, or this. It's before this existed, right? Because they don't have this yet in the Roman Empire. They're still using, if they were to make numbers in Latin, it'd be a Roman numerals, but that's why it's 666 when you add it all together. This is called, I told you before, it's well known in Judaism and ancient culture. It's called gematria. Gematria. No extra charge for that. Anyway, it's when you use letters to represent numbers and to make a point out of it. We'll do what we can. I'm going to try to get through the opening part of 14, and then we're going to skip ahead, maybe all of 14, then we're going to skip ahead to 17. So we'll see. Okay, chapter 14. If you have your Bible with you, or Bible app, something, look on someone if you can, or we might have extra Bibles sitting around here. Chapter 14, verse 1. Then I looked, and lo, on Mount Zion, of course, that's the heavenly Mount Zion, that's the New Jerusalem, stood the Lamb. Of course, we know the Lamb equals the Messiah or Jesus. And with him, there was 144,000. Remember them? So again, it's a lot of metaphor upon metaphor. These are the angelic army of hosts, but it's the people of God, probably representative 12 times 12 times 10 times 10 times 10. Remember that? So this is the complete people of God. Whether they're Jew or Gentile, if they believe in Jesus, they made it to this number. And if you say, no, that's a literal 144,000, I'm going to ask the question, are there any other numbers you think are literal? And why do you pick that one? It's safer in apocalyptic literature to assume all of it is symbolic. And so this 144,000 is 12 times 12 times 10 times 10 times 10. So it's the people of God. They are with the Lamb. That's good news, because that's us if we're a Christian, who had his name and his Father's name written on their foreheads. So it's, again, it's like what John has called to be sealed. To be sealed or to have a name written on you means basically the same thing. It means you're identified with him. You're with them, you might say spiritually protected. They're identified. I want my name on my forehead, but not literally. It's not literal. Okay. And I heard a voice from heaven, like the sound of many waters, and like the sound of thunder. Many waters, of course, goes back straight to Ezekiel 9:4. It's the voice of God. It sounds as loud and authoritative. And loud thunder, of course it is. The voice I heard was like the sound of harpers playing on their harps. How about that? So it sounds loud, but it sounds beautiful. It's powerful. And they sing a new song, before the throne. It's one of the many times referred to as a new song because it's new because it's a new victory. Remember when the Israelites passed over the Sea of Reeds, the Yam Suf, or called the Red Sea? When they passed over Yam Suf, the Sea of Reeds, they sang a new song. They would make up new songs because they have a new victory, a new reason to praise him. It's a new time that God delivered me. Let's make up a song about it. And so it's a new song. And that's why they're doing this. They're singing a new song for the throne and before the four living creatures and before the elders. Remember that way back in Revelation chapter 4? No one could learn that song except the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth. No one can learn that tune. I like that. It is these are they who have not defiled themselves with women. Bom, bom, bom. For they are literally virgins. They are virgins. They are chaste. It is these who follow the Lamb wherever he stinking goes. It's in the Greek. These have been redeemed from mankind as first fruits for God and the Lamb. And in their mouth no lie was found, for they are spotless. There's a lot of images there, of course. These are the ones who have not defiled themselves. So what in the world is that? Why is it so bad to be with a woman, and what's wrong with women? Well, a lot of things are wrong with women, and I'm going to talk tonight about, I'm just kidding, that's just a joke. Okay, in a holy war in the Old Testament, the armies who were male, they had to maintain ritual purity. And I put that in yellow. Ritual purity is a pure state that allows you to offer sacrifices and offerings in the Jewish temple. It's like that residue idea that builds up on you. It's not the same as sin per se, it's ritual impurity. Sometimes it's associated with sin. Usually it's not. You can't get in contact with a corpse, ritually impure. Women can't menstruate because there's blood involved, ritually impure. You can't be near this, ritually impure. So what'd you do? You didn't go to hell and so forth, but you had to be either baptized, you had to fast, you had to go to the temple, the priest, and say, what do I do? And there's different times of cleansing or fasting and so forth to get you, you have a timeout because you got ritually impure. Well, we're all adults here. Semen and excrement made you ritually impure. It did. Semen probably because it relates to life. Thus, you weren't supposed to have contact with either one of those before war. You weren't supposed to have it. And if you want, you go look at Deuteronomy 23, 9, and 10, and that's, well, some of you are, I'm afraid to read that in front of your presence. And 13 and 14, and then 1 Samuel 21, 2 Samuel 11, they all talk about that, how you can't be near it. And they'll say, God, I didn't do anything. Whether they did it to themselves or someone else or with a wife, whatever, you can't be near it. If you compare that to Isaiah 4, 3-4, Isaiah uses in the metaphorical sense. That is, you'll see it's a metaphor, which is what John does. That's what John does. So he's not literally meaning an army of people who've never been in contact with this stuff. That means they're pure. That's all this means. But since I'm not a Jew, it doesn't ring true immediately. I got to know my Old Testament. But then understand, this is like a holy army who has been set aside and pure. It's a vast, pure, holy army. So they not defile themselves because they were, quote, virgin, they were chaste, and that's what makes them pure. And they have follow the Lamb wherever he goes. Wherever he leads, I'll go. I'll follow my Christ. You know that song? Ever heard that tune before? In Baptist world, it's extremely, I'll follow wherever he leads. Anyway. It's like Just As I Am. Ever heard of that one before? Just as. Well, that's one of the other ones. Those are, it's in there, right? Just, notes go wherever it goes. Anyway, so where he goes, I love that line, is wherever he goes, will stay pure. But that's what keeps them pure. That's what keeps them ritually pure, is because they follow the Lamb wherever he goes. And John makes it very clear that where the Lamb went was to the cross. He went to the point of death. If you follow the Lamb, you stay pure. You get a name on your forehead. You get sealed. You get a crown. You get a new stone with your name on it. John says it 500 different ways. You make it to the world to come. You get a reward. I mean, on and on. You get to the heavenly banquet. You get a feast. The point is you want to do that. These have been redeemed as the first fruits. First fruits, of course, everybody knows that you're farming and the harvest comes in. The very first fruits demonstrates the harvest is just about to be taken in. And that's good news. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15 that when Jesus was raised from the dead, he's the first fruits of those who have died. We're going to be like him. We get a resurrected body. So if we could see him now, we go, oh, we're going to look kind of like that. That'd be great. And in their mouth no lie was found, for they're spotless. There's no lie unlike all the people in the lamb and the goat and the false prophets. That is to say, the Roman religious system. They lie against the truth. They claim it for themselves. They want people to worship them. Well, that's a lie. That's false. These Christians are the ones who do not lie like that. That is to say, they don't worship them. They don't lie against knowing Jesus in the face of persecution. They don't lie and say false things about the power of Rome and how it is so powerful. And they don't lie. That's they don't join in. And then, so we have this opening scene. If you look on your outline, I just did that real quickly in your outline, those who have it. That was the opening scene. And then we have the 7 agents of judgment. I saw another angel flying in mid-heaven. So the idea for them is this is universal. You might say, well, no, it's not, because the curvature of the earth means about, well, they don't think that way. The earth is very small, and this is still somewhat cosmic. The point is, flying in mid-heaven means all people could see or hear it. With an eternal gospel, that is no beginning and end, is going to go on, to proclaim to those who dwell on earth, to every nation and tribe and tongue and people. This gospel is universal in scope. It's supposed to be for all people. So now, this angel is preaching the gospel to the pagans, and this is what's going on. Verse 7, and he said with a loud voice, fear God. Well, they said that about the emperor. They said, fear the emperor. He's saying, nope, fear God, and give him glory. For the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea and the fountains of water. Again, you worship him. Why? Because he's the creator. That's the common theme in Judaism, and it's certainly the theme in Revelation. That one of the chief reasons you worship, back in Revelation 4, is because all things were created by him. Remember that song I played for you that I wrote for the girl, the trio? That's from Revelation 4. Why? You worship him because all things were created by him, and by his will they have been made. So he's creator. That's why I worship him. Now, the hour of judgment has come, but it's not full yet. It's a foretaste. And here's a little $1 million word for you in scholarship. I've been wanting to use it, but I'm scared to use it. But I'm sorry. Well, I just am. It's proleptic. Proleptic means it's you're acting now as if a future thing has already come. It's a foretaste. It's proleptic. It's a very common. And the best analogy I know of is my wife. When I was getting my PhD, working on my dissertation, and wanted to quit, I don't know, at least once or twice a month. And she would say, no, you're not going to quit. We've come this far. You're not going to give up. Nope. No, she really would say, no, you're not going to. And I really want to. And then one day, I've never done anything so demanding in my life as that. And especially for me, my personality type, I want to be around people, not sit and stare at a computer all day. And she bought me a congratulations on your PhD card. It had pillars on the front and said, way to go, PhD grad, and filled out this wonderful card as if I'd already graduated. Well, I kept it on my desk until my dissertation was completely finished. That card was proleptic. And it's very encouraging to me, and I'd read it many, many times. I used to have it, part of it memorized, because I'd go, okay, I can do it. I'm going to make it. Congratulations on your piece. I can make it. Well, that's proleptic. Well, that's what he does here several times. He tips his hat. He's already done this a few times when he says, fallen is great, the Babylon. Well, he hadn't fallen yet. The final judgment's coming in a few chapters, which we might get to tonight. So he's saying, the good news is, give him glory. Worship him. Everybody should hear that, verse 8. Another angel, second, followed. Fallen is Babylon the Great. And of course, he means Rome. Babylon is the exemplar of bad, sinful nastiness for the Jews. It's the paradigmatic of bad things. And so it's very common in John. John always says Babylon. Of course, he means Rome. I just use you as an analogy for my proleptic PhD card. Remember my analogy? I really appreciated that card. She who made all nations drink the wine of her impure passion. So she seduced them. All the nations drank from her, all the Roman nations. Verse 9, she's fallen because she seduced everybody. Verse 9, and another angel, a third, followed them, saying with a loud voice, if anyone worships the beast and its image and receives a mark on his forehead, like I have one, of a different lamb, right? Or on his hand, he also shall drink the wine of God's wrath, poured unmixed into the cup of his anger, and he shall be tormented with fire and sulfur in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. This is proleptic, because this judgment, it will happen in a few chapters. But he's saying, I'm telling you, so if you are identified with that other religion, you're going to be judged. You're going to be judged. Verse 11, and the smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever, and they have no rest, day or night, these worshipers of the beast and its image, and whoever receives the mark of its name. He didn't say everybody goes straight to hell. He says those who worship. There's still a chance for them to say no. He still wants people to repent. And notice also that into verse 10, their burning is the wrath goes upon them in front of the angels in the presence of the Lamb. In other Jewish literature, in 1 Enoch, and also in 4 Ezra, which is a Christian document, the Gospel of Peter, Apocalypse of Peter, they have text that says that part of the bliss of the heavenly realm is that the saints get to watch them be tormented. Well, in John's Gospel, John's Apocalypse, there's nothing like that. It's just not like that. It's only in presence of him. It's not because we get to enjoy that, but it was popular amongst other Jews and Christians that go, yeah, suck it, God won't get you. Yay, God got you. But not in John's Revelation. And here's verse 12, one of the wonderful summaries of the entire Revelation, which we've had a few times. This is it. Here's a call for the endurance of the saints, those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Remember in 13:10? If you don't remember, I'm going to read it to you. In 13:10, he said, here's a call for the endurance of faith, the faith of the saints. And so we have this over and over. Here's a call. The point is, if now's the time to not give him, you cannot worship the other beast. You can't do it. even to the point of death, you cannot worship other gods. As Talbot would say, it's first commandment faithfulness. That is, the first commandment is what? I'm the Lord your God and have no other gods before me. And so you can't do it. And the faith of Jesus, the commandment of God, the faith of Jesus. So endure. You don't want to be punished. You don't want to have that God's wrath, his judgment on you. And David, what about this? This torment goes up forever and ever, and they have no rest day or night, blah, blah, blah. It sure, the issue then is, and maybe I'll do this a little bit later on, but I will do it later on. Because when we get to the judgment scene, do people who are punished, do they know they're being punished? Does it last forever? Do they get annihilated? Do they cease to exist? There are different questions Christians like to talk about. So I'll come back to that later on if that's okay. If you're interested. If you're not interested, then we won't. Verse 13, and I heard a voice from heaven saying, write this, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord. Of course, these are martyrs. These are actual martyrs. Blessed are the ones who die. Blessed indeed, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, for their deeds follow them. I love that. Man. That is, he is very aware of your staying faithful even to the point of death. And I love the fact that, of course, of all these things going on, a voice from heaven saying, blessed are the ones. We don't know who that is. Blessed indeed. The Spirit even talks. You don't hear that often in the Bible. The Spirit says, blessed indeed, says the Spirit. So, again, there are two voices. There's a voice from heaven, and then the Spirit says. That's two voices. Well, who cares? Because in Deuteronomy in the Old Testament, you wanted to have, a very common theme is, you want to have two witnesses. That's when you make sure a testimony is solid. You have two witnesses. That's why in Jesus' trial scene, they're trying to find at least two people to agree, and they can't do it. And so here's two witnesses of how true it's going to be. This voice from heaven and then the Spirit. Verse 14, then I looked, and lo, a white cloud, and seated on the cloud, one like a son of man. Now, who is that? It's Jesus. That's right. And of course, that comes from what? We had a whole long spiel about this, I think, in week 1 or 2. Where does this one like a son of man come from? It comes from an Old Testament text. Isaiah. That's Old Testament. You're close. Yeah. Another one? Daniel. It is Daniel. I want you to know this. It's from Daniel 7:13. It's 13 to 14, but 13. One like a son of man. And remember, coming with the clouds, most scholars concur, it doesn't mean literally on the cumulus clouds. It's in the when you're in the divine presence, it's described as being with the clouds on the clouds. So this is a direct allusion, again, to Daniel 7:13. But again, if you go back to the whole book, 1:13, he says the same thing about one like a son of man. So he's got full authority. Remember, in Daniel 7, the one like a son of man is given full authority by God the Father, the Ancient of Days, to rule over all the nations. And he's got a golden crown on his head. Guess what kind of crown it is? There's two kind of crowns. Remember this? There's the Stephanos crown, or Stephen, or Stephanie. That's Stephanos crown. And that's the crown of a victor, a Stephanos crown. The one who wins an Olympic race. Then when the Olympians run, they got that. And there's the diadem. That's the royal crown. And guess what he has? He has a Stephanos crown. Why is that, of course? Because it's a metaphor, because he conquered any kind of temptation, even to the point of death. And it's golden, so it's royal. It's a royal Stephanos crown. And a sharp sickle in his hand, which is an image of judgment. And to another angel came out of the temple. It comes out of the temple. And that, of course, we'll see later on, that's us. But anyway, calling with a loud voice to him who sat upon the cloud, put in your sickle and reap, for the hour to reap is come, for the harvest of the earth is fully ripe. And you reap by bringing into the storehouses the harvest. So this isn't destruction. This is gathering, what we would say is gathering the elect. This is an image of the Lord Jesus gathering in those who are his Christians. That's all this says, which is great. That's all it says. So it's fully ripe. Time's up. Verse 16, so he who sat upon the cloud swung a sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped. So he gathered in those who were his people. Verse 17, something very different is about to happen. Another angel came out of the temple in heaven, and he too had a sharp sickle. Then another angel came out from the altar, The angel who was the power over fire, and he called with a loud voice to him who had the sharp sickle, put in your sickle, and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for its grapes are ripe. So the angel swung his sickle on the earth and gathered the vintage of the earth and threw it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. They were judged. So these are people who persecuted Christians. These are everyone else. Two different kinds of gatherings. This is where I would preach and go, you want to be in the first? Who wants to be in the first reaping? Verse 20, and the winepress was trodden. You know that song, right? The grapes of wrath are trodden. Da, 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 da. Okay, maybe you don't. Was trodden outside the city, and blood flowed from the winepress as high as a horse's bridle for 1,660 stadia. That's basically 40 times 40. That's a perfect cube. So the point is, it's the cubes in the ancient world, both Greek, Roman, and Jewish, were always used as an image of perfection. Later on in Revelation, he's going to measure the temple, and it's measured as a perfect cube. The temple itself inside the Holy of Holies was measured as a perfect cube. And so the point is, it's perfect. So he gathers in the people who are his children, his elect, his people of God. Another judgment he gathers them in for something else. They get judged. And we don't want that. We don't want that. Okay. And I want to skip chapter 15. Is there anything you want to talk about chapter 14? Most of you are awake. That's good. I appreciate that. I know the air's turned off. It gets warm in here, doesn't it? I'll turn it on. Stay with me. Anything else? Okay. Well, let's go. So what I'm going to do is go to chapter 17. Let me go back up for a little bit. If you'll remember, this right here. We'll back up. If you'll remember, so what we did is 14 is real short, because we did it pretty quickly here. So that's the big thing of tribulation. It's somewhat proleptic of the judgment to come. The next one is very similar. It's about the bowls of wrath. If you remember a few weeks ago, I compared that. I compared the angels, remember the trumpets and the angels and the bowls of wrath, and I put them side by side because it's so similar. So read it yourself and look at the commentaries, but it's real similar. It's another time to describe what it's like to go through this tribulation time on earth. It's very similar to 1 and 2. It's very similar, the bowls of wrath. You'll see they increase in intensity. It's just another image. It's another go at it. If there's not any question, I'm going to go ahead all the way down to chapter 17, so I'm going to skip that. Nope. All right, well, let's go to 17. In 17, we have another image. In 17, we have an incredible 17:1. And I saw, and then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls, that's the bowls of wrath we didn't talk about, came and said to me, come, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who is seated on many waters. So this next image, the best as we can, this is a complex metaphor upon metaphors. I'll do the best job I can to do my best to explain it, but it is a complex metaphor. It just is. I didn't write it, but I'll do the best I can to explain it. But it's very similar. Most scholars concur that this is just another image of the beast in Revelation 13. He's just giving another way to describe it. I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who is seated on many waters. On many waters. Now, of course, over and over and over, he references Babylon. This many waters comes from Jeremiah 51:13. Oh, he's the judgment of Jeremiah 51. He says, "O you who dwell by many waters, rich in treasures, your end has come, the thread of your life is cut." That's a judgment in Jeremiah's time of the literal Babylon. Now, why does he say many waters? Because Babylon's over here, and the Euphrates River and Tigris River had tons of tributaries, and they call those different many waters. So in Jeremiah's time, there was an actual Babylon that he's saying God's going to judge you. John uses that image to talk about Rome. You with me? Maybe? So seated upon many waters is the nation of, basically, it's Rome. Rome doesn't sit on waters. He's using a biblical analogy about Babylon, his favorite bad guy, to use it against Rome. And he's going to make that real clear in a second. He will make it real clear. Okay, so look at verse 2. With whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication. That's a standard, remember we talked about this? This is standard prophetic judgment. Remember Israel, when it worships other gods, they say they're whoring around. Remember that? The prophets say one time, is it Amos, says that it's like you're a donkey in heat. You can't wait to mate with other people. That's a metaphor for you want to worship other gods. So this fornication is the idea you can't wait to do it. So everybody, all the kings of the earth have committed fornication with Rome, and with the wine of whose fornication the dwellers on earth have become drunk. All of Rome's been influenced by it. Okay? And he carried me away in the spirit, so he doesn't go anywhere. He still has a vision, just like he's had a vision of the throne, into a wilderness. And I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast. So it's red beast. What else was red? Talk to me. What else was red earlier?
A horse.
A horse was early on, that's right, which represented probably death and murder. What else is in chapter 13 was red? Huh? Satan, the dragon, the beast. So Satan is red. So, of course, this beast is red because it's fueled by Satan, right? A scarlet red, which was full of blasphemous names. Remember, that's what the emperors called themselves, Lord and God. They had what Jews and Christians would call blasphemous. You're not God. You don't call yourself that. It had 7 heads and 10 horns. So that's a weird image there of 7 heads and 10 horns. There's so much more there, but I'm going to pause there. So 7 heads and 10 horns. Who does represent? We'll go there in a second. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet and bedecked with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her fornication. So she is laid out very, very rich. She's not like the Christian. She's very, very wealthy. Rome was very, very wealthy. And later on, when it talks about all the different people who are crying out, they're merchants. They're the economy. It's the economic power. And verse 5, on her forehead was written a mysterious name, a name of mystery. The point is, you got to know who we're really talking about. Babylon the Great. It's not Babylon. So if you're a first century person, you go, we get the mystery, wink, wink. It's not Babylon, it's Rome. Mother of harlots and of earth's abominations. I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. When I saw her, I marveled greatly. But the angel said to me, why are you marveling? Why are you wondering? I will tell you the mystery of the woman. Praise God, he did. And of the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns that carries her. The beast that you saw was and is not, and is to ascend from the bottomless pit and go to perdition. And it's headed to hell. It's headed for judgment. And the dwellers on earth, whose names have not been written on the book of life from the foundation of the world, will marvel to behold the beast, because it was and is not and is to come. And a lot of people love to talk about who these 7 heads are. We'll see in a second, are leaders. And just for fun, this is the nonsense that's out there. If you do a Google search, what I'd do that for fun to figure out what people are calling these heads. This is one of them. The 8 kings of Revelation, from Revelation 17. The devil from the bottomless pit impersonates John Paul II, the 8th king, blah, 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 blah. This is nonsense. Okay, every ancient scholar believes that this is a reference to the emperors of Rome. And so in 1308, Nero he ruled Rome. He is not, he's now dead in his time period, and he is to come, or he will rise. Again, this is, whether you believe it or not, you can look at ancient literature, this is a common Nero myth. You think he's dead, but he didn't. He's really going to come back with the old Parthians, and the Romans can't stand them. They're off in the east. They're going to come, he's going to come back and be the boogeyman. And so he's using a common boogeyman legend myth to talk about an end-time figure who's really bad and scary. He's using a myth to really talk about an end-time bad guy. With me so far, basically? So it seems to be the case that that beast of Revelation 13 is probably this idea, the Nero myth probably represents the sense of Rome. But all of these heads, what's going on with these heads here? Let me go ahead and let me keep reading here. Verse 9, this calls for a mind with wisdom. He's saying, you got to understand this. So he's saying, look beyond the literal. The 7 heads are 7 mountains. Boom, right away you think Rome. Because everybody knew in Roman culture that Rome was built on 7 hills. So he's saying the heads really represent 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. He's trying to help them understand, I'm not talking about Babylon. I'm talking about Rome. They are also 7 kings. Well, turn. So now they're both heads, they're mountains, and they're kings. So he's using a double metaphor. Okay. You with me so far, kind of? Okay. So the heads represent mountains, wink, wink, it's Rome. Those dragon heads also represent kings, 5 of whom have fallen. They're died. One is, right now, the present king. The other has not yet come. If 5 plus 1 and 1 that come means, which one are we waiting on? We're waiting on the which one? The 7th or 8th one, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, if you go by what, this might be hard to read from a distance because it's kind of grainy. But the first emperor is Augustus, Caesar Augustus. You have Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, Nero. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Galba, Ortho, and Vitellius, they were all very similar. So it's difficult to tell what he has in mind. Then you have Vespasian and Titus, Domitian, and so forth. So we just don't know which ones he's talking about. Does he start with Tiberius? Does he start with Augustus? Does he count the ones that happened in the same year, Galba, Otho, and Vitellius, these 3? Does he count them as one head, or does he count all 3? And so, but people, it doesn't stop the average. These are all the rest of all the other emperors, all the way to the middle of the 3rd century. Decius did not like the Christians. Boy, he didn't like them, and neither did Trajan at all, and Domitian hated them too. And most people think Revelation was written around the time of Domitian. So if you go on Google and Google your books, they're going to try so hard to figure out exactly who these kings are, and they're going to make up all kinds of things like this and say, oh, no, it represents the Pope. You can go online and look at different kingdoms. The heads are really not kings, but kingdoms. So it's the Greeks, then the Romans, then this, all the way to the Americans, and then it's the Russians, and they make up all kinds of stuff. Most people who read apocalyptic literature don't do that. We look for this because we think John spoke a message to his people. Remember, we talked about this a lot. It would have made sense to him. It would have made any sense to write this to his churches of Asia Minor, to talk about Russia or the Pope. So instead, what he's talking about, he's pulling this image of there's one earthly ruler who's not yet come. That would be the 7th one. And that's the full one, that last one, whomever that is. And in verse 10, and when he comes, he must remain only a little while. When the 7th one comes, it ain't going to last long. This is the ultimate bad guy. It's that Nero myth. There's going to be one bad guy. Now, let me drop a little footnote, as my professor used to say. Let me drop a little footnote, Wayne Stacy. Real briefly. So what he has in mind here is who Paul calls in 1 Thessalonians and 2 Thessalonians, I apologize, the man of what? Lawlessness. Is there 2 S's in there? Well, I don't remember now. Spell check. The man of lawlessness, if you're reading 2 Thessalonians. And it's also in the Gospel, Jesus will talk about false prophets who will lead people astray. What became an image in Judaism and Christianity is an end-time ruler figure who's a real bad guy. Whether it's a literal earthly or end-time cosmic, you make up your own mind. But this person will represent the bad guy. There's one term everybody's heard. This is the great irony because it has nothing to do with this. You know the other term everybody's heard? Antichrist. Okay? Antichrist, you've heard that term before because, well, thank you, dispensationalism and otherwise. Antichrist actually has nothing to do with this. Antichrist comes from the letters of 1 and 2 John, and it's used specifically, and I'm also going to put it on the screen, but I don't want to go there unless you want to, but this Antichrist is something specific to do with John's community in the letters of John. There are people in his church who left the church, if you can imagine people leaving a church. And they left because of their theology. They left because this small group of people, well, there's a group, we don't know how big or small they are. They left the church because they were arguing that Jesus wasn't really human. He just seemed like it. He seemed like it. So he looked like it. He seemed, and the Greek word for seem, if I spelled it in English, it would look like this. It'd be dokeo. But in Greek, it's with a C because they don't use the K. Well, they do. It comes from the Latin. I'm sorry. You don't care about the nerd talk. But okay, so doceia. The reason why that matters is because the term for these kinds of people are called Docetists or Docetism. And that is Jesus seemed human. He seemed like you could hug him, but he wasn't. He was so divine, he wasn't one of us at all. Well, there's a group of people in John the Elder, 1, 2, 3 John, those small letters, a group of people left church and said, y'all have gone crazy. He wasn't really human. He was divine. He seemed human. He seemed that way. John the Elder writes about them, those people who left his church. He says, those who have come from among us, they have the spirit of the Antichristu. Antichristu. Anti in Greek means against, or it can mean instead of Christ. They have the spirit of the Antichrist. So this means they got an evil spirit. They got a bad attitude. They're against Jesus and Christ because they have bad theology. Well, that doesn't stop people from using that term all the time to talk about an end time figure. And nowhere in the Bible is this an end time figure, which is why you've not heard me talk about it until this very moment. In the New Testament, this end time figure is called, by Paul, the man of lawlessness. Sometimes he's called the false prophet. That's what John almost certainly has in mind here. What he has in mind here is this end-time king figure who's a real bad guy, like Nero was considered. Let me pause there for a second. Any questions or comments about that? If 7 is such a perfect number?
Why would it be associated with something evil?
Oh, good. Oh, yeah, good. So 7 can be perfect in that it's whole. It's complete. Not morally perfect per se, but the whole package. It's like today, well, and like 3 is some of that way, but that's how it is today. Most time now, if you write a sentence, well, I mean, very few times does someone say it was blank and blank. They have to have blank, blank, and blank. You just got to get to the third one. That's the idea. They do that with 3 and with 7. So it's complete. Or in modern times, we use 10 as a number 2. I was listening to Donald Trump's talk to Congress, and he said in 9 years, or 7 years, whatever it is, we'll be at 250-year anniversary of our country. But he had to round it off to 0. But everybody does that. Well, the 100th year anniversary, the 200th, in other words, that's really special. Why is that more special than 197? Because we want to round it up. We like the 000. We got to round it up. Well, that's based on that 10. Romans did that more. But most of the time, Jews didn't. Theirs were 7. You round it up to 7, that's the whole one. So he's not going to last long. Whatever this end figure is, ain't going to last long. Verse 11, as for the beast that was and is not, it is an 8th, but it belongs to the 7, and it goes to perdition. That's not confusing at all. The point is, it's going to seem like an 8th one. It's just really one of the 7 come back. That's the Nero myth, that he's going to come back. He's going to seem like an 8th one, but he really is one of the 7. He's going to look familiar. Let's say if we have 10 elders here, there's going to be 11th, but it's really only 10th because one is a repeat Merida. It's another Merida, and that would be so good. So it's not really 11, but kind of, but not. It's Merida 2.0. That's their point. They're playing on a Nero myth that he came back, and that they really do think that. They really think. And it goes to perdition, meaning it's from hell. This guy is evil. It's evil. And the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power. So he's talking about the future. These are 10 kings. We don't know. 10 is this incomplete number. Whoever this might. So some earthly kings will receive power in the future. We don't know who they are. Don't have a clue. But they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour. That's good. About 60 minutes. No, it's a short period of time, right? Remember early in Revelation, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour, right? It's just a snippet. Just like the leader won't, end of verse 10, he's going to come just for a little while. These kings will have it for 1 hour together with the beast. So whoever this end time figure is, he's going to have 10 kings or these indeterminate amount of earthly local princes or something, and they're going to join together. But just for a little bit, it's going to seem like the whole world's about to turn against him. Verse 13, and these are of one mind, and give over their power and authority to the beast. And they will make war on the Lamb. That is, all these earthly leaders will join together with this final end-time Nero-like figure, and they're going to fight against the Lamb. And the Lamb will what? Conquer them. Is there any doubt in your mind about how that's going to work out? They're going to gather together. This is standard Jewish and Christian apocalyptic talk. There's going to be an end time gathering of the bad guys by one main bad guy ruler. And he's going to be conquered. They're just over. For he is what? The Lord of lords and the King of kings. And those with him are called and chosen and faithful. And he said to me, the waters that you saw where the harlot is seated are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. So these waters represent all the people under her authority, where the harlot is seated are peoples. And the 10 horns that you saw, the 10 horns on their heads, they and the beast will hate the harlot. These horns are probably local leaders. Will hate the harlot. They will make her desolate and naked and devour her flesh and burn her up with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to carry out his purpose by being of one mind and giving over their royal power to the beast until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And the woman that you saw is the great city which has dominion over the kings of the earth. So once again, he waits to the very, very end to say she represents Rome. Now, the reason why Talbert thinks that this is primarily representing the economy, the economic power of Rome, who gets drunk off the riches of all the nations, is because of what happens next, which we're not going to do now, but in fact, you can read it on your own. Because in chapters 18, what we call chapters 18, all the way, well, it's a long chapter of 18, and 19 is bad too. That's finally getting to the final judgment. And 18 is a bunch of people crying out, going, oh my goodness, it's horrible, because blah, blah. If you look in verse 19, so 18:9, he speaks, and the kings of the earth, 9, look in verse 11, the merchants of the earth. If you go to verse 17, the shipmasters and seafaring men, sailors. You see how the heading's there? So this is all the power of the economic power of Rome, who got drunk off of her wine. But let's go back to the beginning one more time, because he wants to beat this drum all the way back to verse 4. This is the cry to the Christians. Verse 4, come out of her. Listen, come out of her. I love how Richard Bauckham says it. You don't conquer her. Christians do not conquer Rome. We don't fight her. The call is never to conquer her. It's to come out. Be removed from that. Don't give in to the temptation. My people, lest you take part in her sins, lest you share in her plagues, for her sins are heaped high in heaven, and God remembered her iniquities. So come out. And so we have this long chapter of all the people going, oh my goodness, judgment's here, and they're so sad, upset. And then 19 does some very similar things. It's judgment, judgment, judgment. And it's this nasty, I think nasty, but he didn't ask my opinion, image of it's a heavenly feast of eating them. That is his judgment. Does that make sense? It's just judgment. Verse 9, he says, write this, blessed are those who are invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb. Ugh. Anyway, yeah, we'll stop there for me.
So we're talking.
That's great. So he's still talking about Rome. Why didn't this all happen? The judgment happened. That's a great question. There are different ways that we get at that. One is to say, the simplest, oh, he's just mistaken. But most don't say, most will say is that it depends on if, it's difficult in my opinion to nail down one particular view of this because I think it's deliberately ambiguous. What I mean is, some people say it's Rome, it's only Rome, and that's it. And that's all he's talking about. I don't find that fully compelling to say the word all he's talking about. I think he is chiefly talking about Rome. But if you think it's only about Rome, then you have to figure out did all the plagues come and so forth. And if you go that route, you can say, well, Rome did fall and it was destroyed and that was judgment by God. And I think, I don't remember exactly, in the 5th century, I think early Christians, well, in the 5th century, said that exact thing, that it did fall, told you so. They may not have done every single plague, but they would say it did fall and that was their judgment. If you go the route of it has to be only. If you go the route of saying, well, maybe it's not all, I guess it's a pendulum, that it's also representing an evil empire, then it can be cast to whomever is an evil empire, to whatever is an evil empire. So the real question is, I don't know how to answer the question. If I asked John, if John showed up right here and I said, John, are you picturing just Rome in your time period, only Rome in your time period? I don't know if he would say, absolutely, that's what I mean. My gut tells me he'd probably say, mostly yes. I anticipate that they will receive judgment. And of course, they did. They eventually fell. But if I asked, well, John, can the vision you had apply to any empire that seduces the people and asks them to give their allegiance to that? I think John would say, absolutely. That's my humble opinion. He didn't say that in some secret letter I don't know about. So it is John's vision that Rome is going to get it, and that Christians will be vindicated. Let me say this last thing, I think, and I'll be done with that. The reason why, if you're wondering, why don't I just go all in and say it's just Rome? Because of the text like we just read. When you have things like these heads and the leaders and one's about to come, it hasn't happened in his time yet, but I'm just not sure. If John showed up and I'd say, John, you say here in 17:10 that there's 5 who've fallen, one is, the other one has not yet come, but when he comes, he must remain only a little while. Do you think that's going to happen in your lifetime? Or are you open to that not going to happen in your lifetime? It might not happen for a long, long, long time, and Rome's going to fall hundreds of years from now. I'm not sure what he'd say. My gut would tell me probably say, no, I think it's going to happen very soon. Because he says in the Revelation it's going to happen soon. So I'm just telling you the best I can without giving you a clear answer that I'm not real sure.
Apparently this was a Nero, wasn't it Nero?
Yeah, so you're asking about, just repeat it for the Facebook Live. Yeah, so Rome is not necessarily a port city, the rivers live there, that's correct, but it was a major port of import and export. So it was, I mean, maybe we can. I didn't plan on going through all the different examples in Roman literature for how much money they made and how much harvest they took in, like from Egypt, all the grain. It was the hub. It was kind of like in New Orleans, or that's the best analogy is New York, but that's not. Now there's no analogy because we have such a worldwide understanding of that stuff. But say in the middle of the 19th century for New York and all the immigrants, it was the major gateway. Well, that's how it was for Rome, for the Roman Empire, for most people. You asked the question, was there a fire? Yes, there was a fire, and under Nero, and several Roman sources talk about the fire. In fact, they blame Nero. Nero blamed the Christians, but even the Roman author said that was a load of junk, that he did it. So where were you going with the fire? Are you talking about the fires here? Yeah. Like in verse 19, and then he says, in 1 hour she has been laid to waste. Yeah, again, the 1 hour bit, it didn't take long for judgment. Judgment's about to come. They cried and cried. Yeah, how could this happen? And if you're a persecuted Christian, that sure is good news. To think about Rome, the government that kills you and persecutes you and tempts you, they're going to be judged. When it always comes to the application like, has it happened yet? I'm always going to be,